You get airborne with that thing?
You can, yeah.
Should have mic'd that guy.
Should I say, hey, it's Riley and Ethan here, or should I say, hey, it's Riley, and then you say, hey, it's Ethan?
I think we'll just use that clip.
Perfect. We got Naish's all new Wingsurfer package. Everything you need to get started wing foiling this year.
Yeah, I think that this package is going to be really a good option for anyone looking to get into the sport. It's at a really competitive price point. So we're just going to do a quick video, run through the individual components in the package, and talk about some other things you could do with some current Naish gear in their lineup. Let's start off with the board.
So this is an all new board from Naish. This is the Wingsurfer, purpose built for the beginner wing foiler. This comes in two sizes. We have the 112 here. It also comes in a 122 liter version. It's got great dimensions for learning to foil. It's nice and wide, but not too wide. Good volume, so it'll be a nice stable package. And the little bit narrower width than the previous generation is going to get you planing, scooting across the water a little quicker. So just make those takeoffs that much easier when you're learning to foil.
Yeah, and both Riley and I, when we started winging back in 2021, there's definitely similarities between this board and that generation of Naish that we learned on. I think it's good to talk about like sizing of these boards, and the boards have changed, like Riley said, a little narrower, so it is a little different. But just for the 112 or the 122, I think we typically see like anyone who's under 195 pounds or so is probably going to want to go with the 112. I think if you're over 195, it might, like around 195, 200, you might be able to do either depending on relevant experience. And you know, I think for a beginner who's well over 200 pounds, we're definitely going to recommend the 122. Just for, you want to be on a very stable board when you get into this sport.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we both learned on the 110.
Right.
You know, for me at 190, it was probably right there on the line. You know, those first couple sessions felt a little tippy. But if you stick with it, I do think anybody right in that weight range is going to have a great time on this board.
Totally. Yeah, I think another thing that when I talk to beginners getting into the sport sometimes is they're wondering, you know, they see all the new mid-length style boards or those narrower, longer boards, and those are great, but for someone who's totally new to the sport, we don't recommend going that route. I think it's important to start on something that's going to be really stable side to side, not just fore and aft.
Definitely.
I think this board does a really good job of being kind of a good balance. It's not like some wing boards we've seen past seasons, maybe like the Naish Compact, where, you know, it's plenty wide, stable side to side, but it was a little too short, which definitely makes things a little harder.
So even though it's a beginner board, you do have inserts for anybody who wants to run foot straps on here. You've got a handle on the top and a handle on the bottom, so lots of options carrying this in and out of the water or just throwing it in the back of your car. And yeah, good looking board.
Yeah, and again, also available in the larger 122. While we're here, we can just look at this. This is going to be Naish's Hover Ascend, the Carbon Ultra. It does have a carbon layup. This is not in the package, but it's the same size as the 122 that could be in the package. And we can also custom build in their carbon boards into any package. So just reach out if you have any interest in that. But it's good to show this size too. And also the benefit of going with the Carbon Ultra construction is it's just going to be a couple pounds lighter per the size compared to just the Wingsurfer board.
All right, moving on to the foil. Also in the Wingsurfer lineup is this all new foil for 2025. Also purpose built for people just getting into the sport. And I really like the size on this. It's an 1840, so it's a nice big foil, not too big. You know, I think a few years ago we were putting beginners on like 2,000 plus, even 2,400 foils, but the shapes have gotten so much better in the last couple of years that people are starting on smaller foils and having great success. It's also a little higher aspect than the previous gen beginner foil. So it's labeled an HA, though it's not nearly as high aspect as a lot of the stuff out there right now. So it's still going to be plenty stable for the beginner. You also got 75 centimeter aluminum mass, 64 centimeter aluminum fuse. Just making for a great package to get started.
Yeah, and I think one thing of note on that foil is, like Riley said, it is an HA, they call it that, but that's definitely wouldn't fit into the category that you'd see of high aspect foils. It's probably more of like a mid aspect foil. What it's gonna do is it's gonna give you a really stable, high lift foil to learn on. But you're gonna be able to take it a bit further than you would with like just, you know, the typical big low aspect foil. I think this one, you could probably learn the basics of riding waves on it, and it's gonna have a bit more glide than just like a big 2,000 square centimeter low aspect foil would.
Definitely. Yeah, they have the aspect ratio labeled on here at 6.8, so definitely square in what I would consider a mid aspect rather than a true high aspect, which would be approaching more of the 9-10.
Yeah. I think another thing of note, and this applies to all of Naish's foils, might be hard to show on the video here, but where you are attaching the stabilizer, there's another insert a little farther forward. So if you're getting to the point where you maybe wanted to loosen the foil up, make it a little more maneuverable, pretty simple adjustment, just to remount the stabilizer just a little farther forward and help that maneuverability.
All right, let's check out that wing.
Yeah. Did we talk about the stabilizer?
We didn't talk about the stabilizer.
We didn't talk about
probably should mention that.
Yeah, so this is going to be a 310 surface area stabilizer. Pretty stoked to see that. I think when we learned on Naish foils, which were really great for learning, it was a 450 square centimeter stabilizer, which is super stable. Really good for learning, but it definitely felt like pretty quickly you would grow out and want something that's a little livelier. So I think that 310 is a really good balance of something that's gonna deliver a lot of lift, be plenty stable.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be fun to ride.
Yeah.
And yeah, something you can grow with and not want to replace the whole setup, you know, 6 months down the line. Like, you're gonna have a good time on this for a while.
Yeah. Can you put a carbon mast on that? Is it the same attachment?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing to note. This is fully compatible with Naish's lineup of foils and masts. So if you do want to upgrade in the future, you'll be able to swap out those components as needed.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing when you're buying your first foil, is finding a system that you'll be able to grow with. Whereas you can keep the mast, keep the fuselage, maybe you're downsizing a front wing or a rear wing years into the process of winging. Maybe even go for the carbon mast, but you're not going to be in a situation where you're bailing on the whole kit that you purchased and getting a whole another kit entirely. And Naish has some really amazing foils in their range, in their current foil range.
All right, check out the wing.
Check out the wing. I'm gonna check that it's still recording just so we're not talking to nothing.
Smart.
We're still recording.
Dope.
Good news. Yeah. Onto the wing. This is 2025 Naish Wingsurfer. Before we really look into it, I think the backpack is always kind of a nice thing to look at with wings. I wouldn't make a decision based on it.
It's a nice looking pack.
Nice looking backpack, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I always look at is it has like sufficient support on the shoulder strap. Sometimes if you're carrying the board, you'll have the foil over your shoulder, and having something that does have some decent padding is important. The other thing I'd always look for is a way to attach a pump to the bag, and Naish does have that on this bag.
Yeah.
Also has good airflow, which is definitely good if you're traveling with damp gear at all. Yeah, let's check it out. What's in the bag is we've got our wing here. It's gonna come with a nice wrist leash. In past years, we've seen Naish do like a coiled wrist leash, and I definitely think that a more elastic line is gonna be a much better way to go. So that's good to see. This is a pretty sweet bag.
What is that?
It's pretty rad. Yeah, so
Little
it's
repair
just gonna
kit?
be a little repair kit and some fresh stickies, but that's pretty sick, like an upcycled kite bag. It's cool, Naish. Alright, we just pumped up the new wing. We took it around on the skateboard a little bit, and initial impressions are I am very impressed with this wing.
It's a nice looking wing.
It's really nice. I think obvious upgrade for a lot of people. Hard handles on wings, that is relatively new in the sport of winging, and a lot of like the cheaper wings you'll find in packages do not have that. Main benefit of that is it's just a more direct control of the wing, and you get a more direct response in terms of generating power from the wing. So that's definitely a big upgrade. I think that the canopy also feels quite a bit tighter than other Naish wings I've used in the past. So that's also another benefit for power efficiency, and the overall shape of this wing, you know, I'd say is you could compare it to some really high-end wings out there.
Definitely.
A little bit higher aspect, which is just going to lead to better upwind efficiency.
Yeah.
Do you have another note on the handles?
I was just gonna say it's nice. They went with a nice long front handle. You know,
Yeah.
we're starting to see that. Those ozone flows came out kind of late last year with the longer front handle.
Longer handles.
Yeah. So, you know, you can choke up on it if you need to get a little more power out of the wing. It also opens up the possibility of doing kind of that one hand riding where you come out of a turn and you can just hang out and cruise upwind for a sec just with one hand. So that's cool to see. The handles themselves are really comfy. I'm not sure what the inner material is here, but it's got a nice foam. So nice grip on there, comfy to hold. It's got kind of a nice shape to it too.
Yeah, one more note I'd have on having hard handles on a wing for a beginner is that in the past, there was wings with a bunch of different handles on them, and sometimes when people were learning, they didn't really know where to grab. With the hard handle, it's obvious, one hand on the back, one hand on the front, and then you can micro tune the adjustment on the handle super easily without having to swap to a different one at all. So that's definitely a bonus. Left handle looks really good too.
Yeah.
A lot of this sport is when you're depowered riding swell and you're holding out the wing from this handle here. This one is a pretty rigid one, which I think is kind of my favorite. It's what I see on the Armstrong wings I have. So I think that's another benefit to see. And then we should also talk about windows. It looks like they added a pretty minimalist window design, which I think is a good thing. I think whether windows are really important or not is pretty dependent on your local riding area. And if you're in a super populated area, they're definitely nice to have. But they added some, but it's not going to be taking up a big portion of the canopy. And that's good to see, just because the canopy is going to be stressed more evenly with the smaller windows.
Yeah, it's got a nice panel layout. Not too many panels, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
Overall, just a good looking, well-designed wing.
Yeah, really impressed with these, actually, really impressed.
And this does just come in the one size. It's a 5-meter wing. So we found the 5-meter to be perfect, for a wide range of conditions. That's going to vary a little bit rider to rider as far as sizing goes. But really the 5 is kind of the perfect one wing to get started. You're going to have good power at the low end, but it's not, so big that it becomes hard to handle. And then you can take a 5 into some pretty strong winds without getting way overpowered.
Totally. On that note, since it is just available in a 5-meter, if you're either someone who's maybe a heavier person or in really light wind and needs something bigger, or if you're learning in a really high wind spot like the gorge, and think that a different wing size would be better for you, reach out to us. We can work out a bunch of different custom packages for winging, so it's pretty easy for us to swap in something, really any component. But yeah, that's the 2025 Naish beginner wing package. I think it's gonna be really popular. It's a really fun sport, so yeah, if you're thinking of getting started winging, this is definitely a really good option. Like always, any questions, leave us a comment down below, give us a call at the shop, give us a little like on the YouTube video.
Thanks for watching.